The movie kicks off out in space, on this planet called Turo, where the Grand Council is having an emergency meeting. Turns out something went really wrong in one of the research labs. A scientist named Jumba went ahead and created a brand new creature without getting anyone's permission. All the council members are totally against this thing, but Jumba stands there defending himself, acting like he's a genius. He brags that his creation is a masterpiece. He explains that the experiment is called Experiment 626, and the creature's name is Stitch. According to him, Stitch is insanely strong. No weapon can destroy him, and he's so smart he could outthink 100 computers. Even with all that, the council still insists Stitch is way too dangerous. The Grand Councilwoman, though, points out that Stitch didn't ask to exist. And if he really is as intelligent as Jumba claims, then maybe he should be able to figure out how to act properly. She gives him a chance to speak for himself. But instead, Stitch mouths off and insults every single member of the council. That ticks everyone off. So the Grand Councilwoman declares that Stitch has sealed his own fate. She orders him to be banished to the farthest reaches of the universe and has Jumba's lab shut down for good. After the meeting wraps up, Stitch gets arrested and they take his genetic fingerprint before carrying out the exile. But then he totally flips the place upside down, causes a huge mess in the lab, steals the spaceship, and blasts off the planet. The Grand Councilwoman orders a chase, but Stitch manages to escape into space. So she commands her people to track his ship to see where he's headed. Turns out he's flying straight toward Earth. She tells Jumba he's gotta go down there himself and capture Stitch. Jumba agrees, but only if she cancels the order to destroy his lab. She gives in, since honestly she doesn't have another choice. That's when a scientist named Pleakley jumps in, saying he's an expert on Earth creatures and needs to go with Jumba to help catch Stitch. The Grand Councilwoman agrees, but makes him promise to keep Earth safe from any damage during the mission. Pleakley's over the moon, super happy, hugging Jumba like crazy, while Jumbo's just annoyed and clearly doesn't want him tagging along. Still, he can't go against her orders.
Now we jump over to Earth, where we meet a little girl named Lilo, living out on the islands of Hawaii. She's crazy about animals and birds, feeding the fish in the ocean, even opening the chicken coop just to let them run free. Then she takes off running because she's late for her hula class. When she finally gets there, the other girls start picking on her for being poor. Still, Lilo tries to fit in. She shows them a friendship bracelet she made out of seashells. But one of the girls laughs at her, says it looks like trash, not like the nice bracelets they've got. She even tells Lilo she doesn't have any friends, so she can't call it a friendship bracelet anyway. Lilo's hurt by that, but she keeps quiet and doesn't answer back. She just gets ready to dance with the others, while all the parents sit in the audience watching. But she feels even more upset when she realizes her sister Nani still hasn't shown up. Even after the dance starts, she keeps glancing over, wishing Nani would walk in. Then, out of nowhere, that same girl shoves Lilo, knocking her down. Lilo finally loses it. She pushes the girl right back, and the kid ends up falling off the stage. Lilo had no idea that her sister Nani actually tried to come, but her car broke down and she had to fix it. By the time she made it to the theater, the show was already over, all because of what Lilo had done with her classmate. Meanwhile, Lilo was back home, sitting alone and listening to music. When Nani finally showed up, Lilo refused to open the door. Instead, she told her to read the note stuck on it. Nani looked and saw it said, "Get out of the house." She threw the note away and tried to convince Lilo to let her in, telling her the social worker was on her way. But Lilo didn't care and still wouldn't open. Then the social worker showed up. Her name was Keiko. She came to check on them and see how they were living. Nani greeted her politely and took her to the back door, but it was locked too, so Nani had no choice but to break it. She explained to Keiko that her sister gets scared when she's alone, and that's why she locks all the doors. Keiko walked into the house with Nani and immediately noticed the place was a total mess. She told Nani her job was to make sure Lilo was living in a safe, stable home, and that's clearly not what she was seeing. She said she knew they'd been through a lot after losing their parents, but Nani had to step up and take responsibility if she didn't want to lose custody of her sister. So Keiko gave her 1 week. In that time, the house had to be clean, the fridge had to be full of food, and both Nani and Lilo needed health insurance. She finished by telling Nani that if she could pull this off, she'd still have a real chance to keep guardianship of her sister. Nani walked out of the house feeling down. That's when their neighbor, Jojo, showed up. After hearing what happened with the social worker, she tried to comfort Nani, encouraging her and reminding her she was strong enough to take care of her sister. Then Jojo's son, David, came by, and it was pretty obvious he liked Nani. He asked if she wanted to go surfing with him, but Nani turned him down, saying she was too busy. That night, Nani sat down with Lilo, and the two of them talked quietly. Lilo opened up about the girl who picked on her earlier and asked if that meant she was a bad kid. Nani reassured her, telling her she's beautiful, just going through a tough time, especially after losing their mom and dad. She promised Lilo she'd always be there for her no matter what. Lilo got emotional and told Nani that she'd already made up for the loss of their parents. Meanwhile, out in space, Stitch was still on his way to Earth. He was chillin' inside the ship until, out of nowhere, the alarms went off. Something was wrong with the navigation system. Annoyed by the noise, Stitch smashed the control panel, breaking it, and the ship spun out of control, shooting straight toward Earth. At that very moment, Lilo looked up at the sky and spotted a bright star moving across it. Excited, she kicked Nani out of her room so she could make a wish. Closing her eyes, she wished for a real friend, one who wouldn't tease her or make fun of her. Right then, Stitch's ship crashes down onto Earth, hitting the ground hard. But somehow, Stitch walks out without a scratch, all proud of himself for getting away. Suddenly, though, the collar around his neck zaps him with a jolt of electricity. Turns out it's Jumba messing with the remote, trying to figure out how the collar works. Pleakley tells him to knock it off, saying the collar's supposed to help them track Stitch's location. Back on Earth, Stitch struggles with the collar until he finally yanks it off. That's when he notices a party nearby, and right in the middle of it, this huge, delicious-looking cake. The second people spot him, panic breaks out. They scream, scatter everywhere, and a few even try to attack him. But Stitch is way too fast, dodging everything while photographers capture every wild moment. He keeps darting around until he reaches the cake, grabs a big chunk, and bolts outside. But as soon as he hits the street, bam! A bus smacks right into him, knocking him out cold.
Meanwhile, Pleakley and Jumba are busy arguing after losing Stitch's tracking signal. Their fight causes them to lose control of the ship, but they eventually manage to stabilize it and land safely on Earth. From there, they decide to follow the trail of chaos Stitch left behind to track him down. The next morning, they disguise themselves as humans and check into a hotel. While riding the elevator, they catch a news broadcast where the anchor warns the public about a strange creature spotted the night before. She explains that the government has captured the creature and placed it in an animal shelter. At the same time, Lilo is out with her friend Jojo. Lilo tells her she wants to visit the shelter, and Jojo agrees, handing her a pepper spray canister just in case she needs to defend herself. Lilo is thrilled, thanks her warmly, and rushes off excitedly to the shelter. At the shelter, Stitch wakes up to find himself locked inside a cage surrounded by many dogs. He tries to communicate with them, but when it doesn't work, he grows frustrated, breaks the cage, and escapes. On his way out, he spots a small cake and rushes to eat it, only to realize it's a trap set by Pleakley and Jumba to capture him. They fire tranquilizer darts at him, but Stitch dodges them and quickly hides back inside the shelter. There, he notices Lilo standing in front of the dogs, and his attention is drawn to an adoption poster showing a girl hugging a puppy. Using his cleverness, Stitch disguises himself to look more like a dog, then approaches Lilo, trying to win her sympathy so she'll adopt him.
The plan works. Lilo is charmed by his appearance and chooses him as her new companion. As they leave the shelter together, Jumba aims a dart at Stitch, but Pleakley, fearing it might hit Lilo, steps in the way. He takes the dart himself and collapses, unconscious.
At home, Nani got mad when she saw Stitch. She wasn't happy about him being there, since he was wild and would just make a mess. But Jojo talked her into it, so Nani went to Lilo and told her that Stitch was her responsibility. She had to take care of him and whatever trouble he caused. Somewhere else, an agent named Cobra showed up. He was the one in charge of looking into the crash of Stitch's spaceship. Cobra guessed that some kind of creature had been incited, and they needed to track it down. Then, one of his people handed him a phone, showing a picture of Stitch with Lilo. Meanwhile, Lilo and Stitch were sitting together eating ice cream when her classmates came over and started picking on her like they always did. The second Stitch saw it, he lost his temper. He shoved one of the girls and knocked her off the little car she was riding. Then he grabbed Lilo, jumped on the car, and sped off like crazy, taking her on a wild ride all across the island until they ended up right at the edge of a cliff. After that, Lilo takes Stitch down to the beach. He's terrified of the water, so she just plays with him on the sand. And the two of them actually have a really fun time together. Later, Nani comes to pick them up in her car to head back home. But on the way, Stitch keeps messing around, distracting her so much that she almost crashes into Jumba, who's dragging an unconscious Pleakley behind him. Jumba spots Stitch, pretends he doesn't know him, but secretly plants a tracker on Nani's car without anyone noticing. It turns out Nani is running late for work and doesn't have time to drop Lilo and Stitch off at home, so she takes them with her. That's when David shows up and chats with Lilo, saying he can tell Nani is always stressed out. Lilo knows David likes Nani and keeps trying to get closer to her, but it never works, so she encourages him, telling him Nani is only stressed because she's thinking about him. Then suddenly, Lilo realizes Stitch is missing. She goes off looking for him and finds out he got bored of sitting around and decided to stir up trouble like usual. Lilo tries to stop him, but she fails. Luckily, nobody seems to notice the mess Stitch is making. That night, David put on a fire dancing show for the tourists, and Stitch was completely fascinated. He decided to copy him, grabbed 2 flaming sticks, and started mimicking the moves. But one of the sticks flew out of his hand and sparked a huge fire, sending the whole place into chaos as people rushed to put it out. Because of all that, Nani ended up getting fired from her job. She took Lilo and Stitch back home, feeling crushed and upset, and didn't want to talk to Lilo about anything so she wouldn't make her feel worse. Meanwhile, Lilo tried to give Stitch a bath, but he refused, ran out, and wrecked the house with his usual chaos. That's when Nani finally lost her patience and decided she was going to take him back to the shelter. Lilo begged her not to, telling her that Stitch was part of their family now, and they couldn't just abandon him. But Nani said she couldn't handle the constant mess anymore, and that she might even lose custody of Lilo because of Stitch's behavior. Outside the house, Cobra was sitting in his car, eavesdropping on Nani and Lilo, listening to everything they said. Then he called one of his guys and told him to set up a meeting with the social worker. Inside, Lilo was in her room with Stitch, trying to explain what a family is, but he just didn't get it. That's when she realized he didn't have one, so she pulled out a photo album and showed him pictures of her family. She told him about her sister Nani, how she used to be the best surfer around, and how she even turned down a free scholarship just so she could stay with Lilo and take care of her. After that, Lilo started teaching Stitch how to dance like her, and in that moment, she felt a real bond with him, like she couldn't imagine life without him anymore. The next day, Nani was rushing to a job interview at a restaurant. She was getting Lilo and Stitch ready to come along since she couldn't trust what might happen if she left them home alone. So, while they were on their way, Kiko showed up with Cobra, who was pretending to be the new social services director. Kiko pulled Nani aside to talk about the mess from the night before, warning her that if things didn't get better soon, she might lose custody of Lilo. Meanwhile, Lilo noticed the tattoo on Cobra's fingers and told him that being a social worker didn't really fit him.
Cobra was impressed by her sharp eye, but didn't respond. Instead, he just kept talking to her about Stitch. Without anyone noticing, he secretly took a sample of Stitch's hair to run some tests on it. After that, Nani drove off with Lilo and Stitch, but Pleakley and Jumba spotted them and started following. Once they arrived at the restaurant, Nani left Lilo and Stitch alone while she went inside to meet the owner. Lilo used the chance to try teaching Stitch how to behave and stay calm, but even with all her effort, Stitch ended up causing a huge mess. The restaurant owner saw everything and immediately refused to hire Nani.
Nani went back home feeling frustrated because she still hadn't found a job. But then Stitch surprised her by handing her a paper with an ad for a surf instructor position. Nani got excited, applied for the job, and was accepted. While Nani was out surfing, Stitch watched her with amazement. When he saw a dog riding the waves, he asked Lilo to let him try too. It was clear Stitch had overcome his fear of water and was having the time of his life. Suddenly, though, Pleakley and Jumba showed up and fired tranquilizer darts at Stitch. Luckily, the darts hit the floaties he was wearing instead. Stitch managed to knock Pleakley and Jumba into the water, but Nani lost her balance and fell in too. At that moment, Lilo and Stitch were about to drown, but Nani and David managed to save them just in time. Meanwhile, Cobra was standing at a distance, watching everything and reporting to the authorities that alien creatures had arrived on Earth.
Later, David and Nani took Lilo to the hospital to make sure she was okay. The doctor reassured Nani that Lilo would recover and be discharged soon, but she asked for Lilo's health insurance papers. Nani froze, knowing Lilo didn't have any insurance. At that moment, Kiko appeared and told Nani that the state could cover all the medical expenses, but only if she gave up custody of Lilo. Nani was shocked by the idea, struggling to believe it, but sadly she didn't seem to have any other choice. Meanwhile, back at the hotel, Pleakley and Jumba were together when Pleakley got a furious call from the Grand Councilwoman. She was angry because humans had discovered their presence on Earth, and she blamed Jumba for breaking the rules by exposing himself directly to people. She ordered Pleakley to arrest him and informed him that troops would be sent to take Jumba back to their planet. But once the call ended, Jumba outsmarted Pleakley, locked him inside a storage room, and declared that he would finish the mission his own way.
That night, Nani sat with Lilo, trying to gently explain that they might be separated soon. Her voice was filled with sadness as she spoke, and Lilo, realizing she would likely be sent to a state care center, told her sister that she understood the situation and asked her to visit whenever she could. Watching them from afar, Stitch felt guilty, believing he was the reason for everything that had gone wrong. Heartbroken, he decided to leave. He walked away from the house and returned to the animal shelter, locking himself inside a cage. The next morning, Kiko arrived with Cobra to take Lilo away, but when they entered her room, she was gone. At that moment, Lilo was searching everywhere for Stitch until she finally found him back at the shelter. Stitch confessed that he was sad because he had caused her to be separated from her sister, and he insisted that he was nothing more than a monster who didn't belong in a family. But Lilo reassured him, telling him it wasn't his fault. She explained that he was just a pet who sometimes did bad things, but with time, he would learn to change and become better. She promised she would never leave him because he was now part of her family.
Suddenly, a portal opened before Lilo and Stitch, and Jumba stepped out, clearly determined to capture Stitch. Acting quickly, Stitch grabbed his weapon and managed to trap Jumba inside a temporal dimension snare before escaping with Lilo back to the house. When they arrived, however, the place was empty. Kiko, Nani, and Cobra were all out searching for them across the island. Meanwhile, Jumba broke free from the trap, reverted to his true form, and followed them straight to the house. As soon as Stitch spotted him, he tried to hide with Lilo, but Jumba destroyed the house entirely, leaving them with no place to conceal themselves.
Lilo grew upset and angry. This was her home, filled with memories, so she stood her ground, ready to face him. Stitch leapt into action, clashing with Jumba in a fierce fight. Just then, Pleakley arrived, intending to help Lilo and Stitch, but before he could explain himself, Lilo sprayed him in the face with pepper spray. At that moment, Jumba was about to capture Stitch, but Lilo struck him on the head with a frying pan, giving Stitch the chance to snatch back the weapon and turn it against Jumba, threatening him. At that moment, Jumba began to manipulate Stitch, telling him that this family had been destroyed because of him. He claimed that Stitch didn't truly choose Lilo at the shelter out of friendship, but only as a way to escape danger. If Stitch really loved her, Jumba said, then he had to leave her life, because he would never be able to stop himself from causing trouble, and in the end, he would ruin Lilo's future. Unfortunately, Jumba's words struck a chord. Stitch gave in, surrendering himself, allowing Jumba to capture him. Not long after, Nani, David, Jojo, and Cobra returned home, only to find the house in ruins. Panic set in as they realized Lilo was missing, and they searched desperately for her, but she was nowhere to be found. Their shock grew when Pleakley appeared before them in his true form. Just then, Cobra revealed his own true identity, an intelligence agent, and immediately placed Pleakley under arrest. But Pleakley quickly pleaded with them, saying Stitch was in grave danger. He explained that he and Jumba had been sent to Earth to capture Stitch, but after observing him closely, he realized Stitch's behavior had changed. He was no longer the aggressive creature he once was. He went on to reveal that Jumba couldn't accept Stitch's change for the better, and was planning to alter his DNA, turning him back into a ruthless monster. He also confessed that Jumba was the one who had kidnapped Lilo. Cobra initially insisted on taking Pleakley in for questioning, but Nani, David, and Jojo begged him not to waste time. They convinced him that saving Lilo had to come first. At last, Cobra agreed. Now we cut to Jumba, who was inside the spaceship with Stitch locked up. That's when we learn Jumba's plan. He wanted to turn Stitch back into a savage creature. But the big surprise was that Lilo had secretly snuck onto the ship without Jumba noticing. The moment Stitch saw her, he lit up with happiness. Lilo managed to unlock the room and set Stitch free. Together, they fought Jumba, overpowered him, and tossed him out of the ship. But then they lost control of the spacecraft, and it started heading straight for the ocean. They had to get out fast. Lilo hesitated, too scared to jump, but Stitch reached out his hand, giving her courage. The two of them leapt together. In the middle of all this, a photo slipped out of Lilo's pocket. It was the picture of her family she'd held onto ever since leaving home. Stitch darted after it and managed to grab it before it got carried away by the wind. Just then, the ship came crashing down into the sea, exploding into wreckage that spread across the water's surface. Stitch popped up to the surface, searching frantically for Lilo, but she was nowhere to be seen. Terrified, he dove back under the waves. And there she was, trapped beneath a huge piece of wreckage. Stitch pushed with all his strength, lifting it off her and freeing her. Lilo floated up to the surface, gasping for air, then dove right back down to pull Stitch up with her. But underwater, Stitch's body was far too heavy, and she couldn't lift him. At that moment, Nani and the others arrived where Lilo was. They pulled her out of the water and rushed back toward the shore. But Lilo kept screaming, begging them to save Stitch before he drowned. Nani dove back into the water, swam down to Stitch, and tried to lift him up, but she quickly realized he was way too heavy. So she decided to drag him underwater as fast as she could until they reached the beach. When they got him out, Stitch wasn't moving at all, completely lifeless. Everyone panicked, thinking he was gone for good. David grabbed a defibrillator and shocked him, hoping to restart his heart, but the jolt wasn't strong enough. Desperate, they hooked him up to a car battery and blasted him with even more electricity, but still, no response. That's when Lilo broke down in tears, heartbroken at the thought of losing him. And then, out of nowhere, Stitch twitched and came back to life. Lilo ran straight to him, hugging him tight while crying. Stitch started coughing, and to everyone's surprise, he spat out the photo of Lilo and her family. Lilo took it in her hands, thanking him through her tears for keeping it safe.
At that moment, a spaceship landed right in front of them, and out came the Grand Councilwoman with her guards. She immediately ordered them to take Stitch into custody, then turned to Cobra, apologizing for all the chaos. She explained that they had captured Jumba and that he would spend the rest of his life in prison. Stitch then stepped forward and asked the councilwoman if he could say goodbye to his family before leaving. She was surprised. She never expected Stitch to bond with humans. But Stitch told her he had found a family who cared for him and loved him. Moved by his words, the councilwoman agreed to let Stitch remain on Earth, but only under supervision to make sure he wouldn't be a threat. That's when Pleakley volunteered to stay with him. The councilwoman hesitated, worried that humans might discover the truth, but Cobra reassured her, promising he would keep the secret from his superiors. Finally, the councilwoman made her decision. Stitch would be exiled to Earth forever. With that, she and her guards left the planet, confident they had made the right choice.
After that, Keiko came to speak with Nani, but this time she had good news. Juju had decided to adopt Lilo, which meant Lilo would stay close to Nani and wouldn't be taken away. Nani promised her sister that she would work even harder to fix the house and give her the life she deserved. But Lilo shook her head and told her she didn't want Nani to give up her dreams for her. She asked Nani to finish her studies first, because once she did, she would find a better job and earn even more. Nani was deeply moved by her words and hugged her tightly. Soon after, everyone joined in a warm embrace, filled with joy and relief. Sometime later, we see Lilo at Juju's house with Stitch by her side. That's when we learned that Stitch had secretly kept Jumba's weapon. To surprise Lilo, he opened a small time portal that allowed Nani to come visit her. The three of them spent the whole night together, laughing and playing as a real family. And that's how the movie ends. If you liked the video, don't forget to like it and subscribe to the channel.